AITA for arguing with my ex at court right before she and her partner passed away. I never imagined I would end up telling a story like this. If someone had told me a year ago that the woman with whom I shared my bed, my plans, and even my nightly prayers would become the person who would hurt me the most in this life, I would have laughed in their face. Because when you truly love, you do not conceive of betrayal. When you give your complete trust, you live convinced that certain disasters only happen to other people. But I was wrong. My name does not really matter. The only thing you need to know is that for 5 years, I was the kind of man who could boast of a happy marriage without needing to say it out loud. My wife and I were one of those couples that people watched with a mixture of admiration and quiet envy. We were never without smiles in public or intertwined hands, or that habit of looking at each other as if the world was less heavy when we were together. I met her at a popular bookstore in the downtown area of the city. It sounds unimpressive, I know, but for me, that moment was a complete jolt. She was standing in front of a shelf of novels, biting her lower lip as she hesitated between 2 books. I perfectly remember the way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear and how she wrinkled her nose when she noticed I was staring at her a little too much. "Are you going to stand there watching me, or are you going to help me decide?" she said. And that is how it all began. An awkward conversation turned into coffee. Coffee turned into dinners. Dinners into 3-hour late-night calls. And before I knew it, that woman already knew my fears, my dreams, my failures, and even the name of the dog I had as a child. She was beautiful, yes, but not just physically. She had a way of taking care of every detail that made me feel chosen. She knew when I was tired without me saying it. She knew when I needed silence and when I needed a silly joke to pull me out of my thoughts. When I got sick, she would sit by my side with an almost motherly patience. When I achieved something at work, she would hug me as if the triumph had been hers too. For years, I felt like I had won the emotional lottery. We married 2 years after we met in a small, intimate ceremony with close family and a few friends. Nothing extravagant. We were never a couple obsessed with showing off luxuries. Our happiness was in ridiculous things, cooking together on Sundays, arguing over which movie to watch, sleeping in each other's arms even in summer, though the heat was unbearable. I had played the guitar since I was young, and she had a habit of asking me to play songs before we went to sleep. "One more," she would always say, and I would play another. Sometimes she would just watch me with that calm smile people have when they believe they have found their permanent place in the world. Then she would rest her head on my shoulder and whisper, "I do not know what I did to deserve you." To be honest, I thought the exact same thing. For a long time, our life was simple and good. We worked hard. We saved. We took short road trips when we could, and we constantly talked about the future. We wanted a bigger house. We wanted a dog. We wanted children, especially children. That was the dream we repeated most insistently. She imagined a girl with my eyes. I imagined a boy with her smile. We even argued about names over dinner like 2 teenagers playing at the perfect family. But the months went by, and that dream did not come. At first, we took it in stride, then with concern, finally with an anxiety that began to settle between us without us noticing. Every negative test was a small defeat. She would smile, pretending it did not matter, but I could hear her crying in the shower some nights. She said she was fine, that we just had to keep trying, but a silent frustration was accumulating in her eyes that I did not know how to heal. I wanted to be strong for both of us. I told her a baby would come when it was meant to, that our marriage did not depend on it, that it was still us against the world. She would nod, kiss me, and seem to calm down, but only for a little while. It was around that time that I was offered a major promotion at the tech company where I work. I am a software engineer, and I was promoted to lead an entire team. The salary increase was excellent, enough to move to a better neighborhood in the suburbs, buy a larger home, and feel like we were finally moving forward. She was thrilled at first. I remember her hugging me, jumping up and down like a little girl. "Now we can really make the baby's room," she said. I believed it too. We moved 3 months later. The house was beautiful. It had a spacious patio, huge windows, and a kitchen that she fell in love with from the first moment. We spent a whole week arranging furniture, hanging pictures, and daydreaming about the new chapter that was beginning. I thought the change would do us good. I had no idea it was actually the beginning of the collapse. My new position demanded more hours away from home, meetings, calls, technical emergencies at all hours. I started leaving early and coming home exhausted. She, on the other hand, worked as a sales representative for a home furnishings company, and she could do most of her work from home. At first, she told me she understood. "It is just a matter of adjusting," she would repeat. But little by little, she began to sound different. She no longer waited for me at the door like before. She no longer sent me messages during the day asking what I wanted for dinner or sending me silly pictures to make me laugh. She began to say she felt lonely with a frequency that made me feel guilty even when I was working to improve our future. I tried to make up for it. I invited her out on weekends. I canceled meetings when I could. I brought her flowers for no reason. I cooked with her at night, but nothing seemed to be enough. There was a sort of invisible distance growing between us, and I could not find a way to break through it. Then came the small details. The kind of details you ignore at first because love always looks for excuses. She started carrying her phone with her everywhere, to the bathroom, to the patio, to the kitchen, even to bed, leaving it face down on the nightstand. It was not like that before. Before, she could forget it for hours and not even care. But suddenly, it became almost an extension of her hand. She also started dressing up more, even when she was not going out. New perfume, more attention to her appearance, lipsticks I did not remember seeing her use. When I asked why she was so done up to stay at home, she would respond with a light laugh. "Cannot I look pretty for myself?" Of course, she could, and I felt miserable for being suspicious. However, a man's intuition has a nasty way of waking up when something no longer fits. Our conversations became short, mechanical. She seemed distracted all the time, as if her mind was somewhere else. Many nights I would find her on the patio, texting with a small, almost secret smile that would vanish as soon as I approached. "Who are you talking to so much?" I asked once. "A friend from work." She said it too quickly. I did not press, but something inside me shifted. That night, while she slept with her back to me, I lay awake for hours staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was overreacting, that the stress, the infertility, the move, and my absence from work were affecting us. I wanted to believe that with all my might because the alternative was unbearable. And yet, watching her sleep so peacefully, I felt for the first time a sensation I had never known within my own marriage. The feeling that I was starting to live with a stranger. The following days, I tried to act normally. I told myself that an intelligent man does not destroy his home over simple intuitions, that being suspicious without proof was a form of cowardice, that perhaps my wife was going through an emotional crisis, and instead of helping her, I was becoming paranoid. But the truth is, when doubt enters your mind, it does not sit in a corner. It takes over the entire room. I started to notice things that had previously gone unseen. I noticed she would smile at her screen, and then when she looked up and saw me, that smile would immediately disappear. I noticed she no longer sought my physical touch. She used to sleep clinging to my chest with one leg over me, as if she were afraid I would slip away during the night. Now she went to bed, leaving a strip of mattress between us that felt like an ocean. When I tried to hug her, she would say she was hot. When I kissed her, she would respond with cold lips. When I tried to initiate closeness, there was always an excuse: exhaustion, a headache, stress, a bad mood. At first, I accepted it. Then I started to feel humiliated. Not because I believed a wife owed me intimacy, but because constant rejection from the person you desire most eventually drills into your self-esteem like water dripping on a stone. One night, while we were having dinner, I tried to have a serious talk. "I feel like I am losing you," I said. She looked up from her plate, surprised. "Losing me? You are exaggerating." "No, I am not. You do not talk to me anymore. You do not look at me the same way. Is something wrong?" She sighed and put down her fork. "I am just tired. This whole baby thing has me down. The new house is overwhelming. You are never here. I do not want to argue." Her answer made sense. It was so logical that for a moment, I was ashamed of my suspicions. I hugged her across the table and apologized. She returned the gesture, but her arms felt limp, absent, as if she were fulfilling an obligation rather than offering comfort. That feeling did not leave me. Another week passed, then two, and her behavior kept getting worse. She started going out alone more often. She said she needed to clear her head, grab coffee, take a walk, visit stores. It did not seem strange that she wanted some air, but it did seem strange that she never wanted me to come with her. When I suggested we go together, she always found a reason to refuse. I want time for myself. I need to sort out my thoughts. I do not want to talk to anyone. However, she would come back from these outings with a strange glint in her eyes. Not the glint of someone who has been crying or thinking. It was the glint of someone who has been emotionally nourished. It was killing me. One Friday, I decided to leave work early to surprise her and take her to dinner. I bought her favorite dessert and drove home imagining that maybe we just needed to reconnect, to make a sincere effort before letting the crack grow wider. When I walked in, I found her on the patio. She was laughing. It was not a casual smile. She was laughing heartily, with that soft, flirtatious laugh she used to give me when I told her something silly. She had the phone pressed to her ear and did not even notice my presence until I closed the door a little more forcefully. She spun around, startled. "I did not know you were coming," she said. And she hung up. It was automatic, instinctive. My chest tightened. "Who were you talking to?" "Natalie, from the company." "And why did you hang up so fast?" "Because you are here." "What kind of question is that?" She smiled, but her smile was defensive. I showed her the box of dessert, trying to ease the tension. "I thought we could go out." "Oh, I do not feel like it today, love. My head hurts again. Always something." I nodded without arguing, though inside something was breaking. That night, she barely touched her dinner and went to the bedroom early. I stayed in the living room with the television on, not really watching anything, just listening to the echo of my own thoughts. I did not want to become that husband who checks purses and phones. I had always found men who live hunting for clues like domestic detectives to be pathetic. I believed in trust. I believed that love without trust was a prison. But I also understood something terrible. Trust cannot stand on its own when the other person starts filling everything with shadows. 3 days later, the thing that finally pushed me over the edge happened. It was Sunday morning. She was in the shower and had left her phone charging on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a notification. I was not going to touch it, I swear. But the message was partially visible, and I only managed to read, "I have missed you since last night." I felt a sharp blow to my stomach. I looked toward the bathroom. The sound of the water was still running. I looked back at the phone. My hands started to sweat. I still had one last moral debate with myself. I still told myself that maybe it was an affectionate friend, a family member, an innocent conversation. But deep down, I knew that no one sends that kind of message at 8 o'clock in the morning with that familiarity unless there is a prior intimacy. I picked up the phone. She used facial recognition and a pattern, but I had seen her unlock it so many times that my muscle memory did the rest. I got in. The first thing I found was an archived conversation with a name I did not recognize. J. Just a letter. I opened the chat and felt the air disappear from the kitchen. I do not know how long I was reading, maybe 5 minutes. Maybe 15. To me, it was an eternity. Every message was a different stab. My wife was not just involved in a secret relationship. She was completely absorbed by it. She told this person everything. What she ate, what she thought, how lonely she felt, how much hearing their voice made her happy. There were voice notes, photos, plans to meet, conversations filled with emotional intimacy and flirtation, and confessions that I had not received in months. And then I discovered something that left me motionless. The person on the other end was not a man, it was a woman. Her name was Jillian. I had to sit down. My legs literally gave out from under me. Not because I cared about the gender itself, but because my brain was trying to reorganize 5 years of marriage under a truth I had never suspected. My wife spoke to her in a way I could not remember her ever speaking to me, not even in our best times. "I dreamed of you last night. I wish I could wake up in your arms. With you, I feel seen." Seen. That word destroyed me. So with me, she felt invisible. I kept reading, my heart pounding against my ribs. I discovered they had been talking for almost 4 months. First as friends on social media, then calls, then casual meetings for coffee, then private meetings. They had been seeing each other while I thought my wife was going out to clear her head. While I was working extra hours thinking about paying for fertility treatments, she was building another emotional life. There was one message from my wife that I still remember almost word for word. "With him, I feel a sense of duty. With you, I feel alive." I wanted to throw up. 5 years reduced to one sentence. I could not go on. I heard the shower turn off and left the phone exactly where it was. I walked to the living room like a sleepwalker and sat down, staring at the wall. When she came out of the bathroom, she greeted me naturally. "Good morning, love." I looked at her, and for a second, I had the absurd feeling that I was watching an actress playing my wife. I replied with a minimal smile. I did not know what to do yet. Yelling would not help. Confronting her without thinking would not either. I needed to understand how far this betrayal went. I needed to know if there was anything left to save, or if I had been living with a complete lie for months. So I did something I never thought I would do in my life. I decided to stay silent and begin to piece together every part of this situation in private. The days following that discovery were the longest of my life. I am not exaggerating. Some pains come like an explosion and leave you breathless for a few hours. But this was different. This was a slow hemorrhage, a silent torture. I would have breakfast across from her knowing she had shared moments with someone else. I would listen to her ask if I wanted coffee while her messages for Jillian echoed in my head. I watched her walk around the house with total normalcy and felt like I was going crazy. The worst part was pretending, because pretending demands a monstrous amount of energy when you are shattered inside. I continued to act like the same husband. I said good morning, kissed her on the forehead, asked about her day. She seemed more relaxed than ever, as if having me completely fooled gave her a peace I had not been able to offer her in months. I began to notice she was even in a better mood. She sang while she cooked. She dressed with more care. She replied to messages with a smile, and each of those gestures made me feel more ridiculous. I did not want to confront her yet because I needed absolute certainty. The messages were already enough to know there was an emotional and romantic betrayal, but a part of me, perhaps the sickest part, needed to look the truth directly in the eyes to finally accept that my marriage was over. I started paying attention to her routines. Tuesdays and Thursdays, she would leave around 4 in the afternoon, saying she had meetings with clients. Saturday mornings, she said she was going to the gym, though she would return wearing a different perfume than the one she left with. Sunday nights, she would lock herself on the patio for an hour with her phone. I noted everything mentally. I became a stranger in my own home, silent, observant, unable to sleep for more than 3 hours at a time. One afternoon, I decided to follow her. I made up an excuse at the office about an external meeting. I took my car and parked half a block from the house. Shortly after 4 in the afternoon, I saw her leave. She was wearing a blue dress I did not recognize and small earrings she only wore when she wanted to look especially attractive. I felt an unbearable pressure in my chest. I followed her, keeping my distance. She drove to a coffee shop on the other side of town. She parked. I did the same a few meters behind, and then I saw her. Jillian. I did not know why I expected something else. Maybe a caricature of a villain, maybe someone obviously manipulative, but no. She was a normal woman, around 40, elegant, self-assured. She had the kind of calm presence that makes others gravitate towards her. My wife got out of the car. Jillian opened her arms, and my wife ran to embrace her. It was not a friendly hug. It was the embrace of two people who miss each other with a hunger. They stayed like that for several seconds. Then Jillian caressed her face with an intimate confidence that cut through me like a blade. Then they walked into the coffee shop together, holding hands. I could not watch anymore. I leaned over the steering wheel and squeezed my eyes shut, because I felt that if I took too deep a breath, I would break into 1,000 pieces. That was the exact moment all hope died. There was no more marriage counseling, no more misunderstandings. No more passing crisis. My wife was in love with someone else. I got home before she did. I had enough time to compose myself on the surface. When she arrived, she was radiant. The meeting was tough, she said, dropping her bag on the sofa. She lied with terrifying ease. I watched her for a few seconds. You should rest, I replied. I will, she smiled at me. That smile confirmed something brutal. I no longer knew the woman I had married. That night, I barely spoke. She did not seem interested in talking either. We ate dinner watching a series, and several times I noticed her looking at her phone under the table. Jillian was surely still keeping her company from the screen. In the early morning, I got up and went to the kitchen for a glass of water. I ended up crying in silence, leaning against the refrigerator. Not out of anger, not yet. I cried out of grief, because I was understanding that I had not just been betrayed. I was losing the entire life project I had built around her. The children we dreamed of, growing old together, the small habits, the emotional security. Everything was collapsing, and only I could hear the crash. For 2 whole days, I thought about confronting her. I imagined raising my voice. I imagined telling her to leave. I imagined calling her mother. I imagined telling Jillian exactly what I thought of the situation. But none of those scenarios brought me peace. The truth was colder. I did not want a spectacle. I wanted to get out of this with dignity. So I started to plan. The first thing was to consult a divorce attorney. I told him the bare minimum, that I suspected an inappropriate relationship, that the house was in my name because I purchased it with funds from my promotion, and that I needed to know my options before speaking to my wife. The attorney was clear: gather financial documents, protect accounts, move joint savings under legal supervision, and do not act impulsively. I followed every step. For a week, I organized papers while she continued her double life without suspecting a thing. Never in my existence had I felt such a methodical coldness. It was as if the pain had turned from fire to ice. I also saved screenshots of the chat, not for public revenge, but because I needed proof if she tried to manipulate the narrative. And I knew my wife well enough to know that when cornered, she could twist any story into a version where she was the victim of emotional abandonment. I would not give her that advantage. The following Thursday, something happened that hardened me completely. I was in my study working on my laptop when I heard her voice on the patio. She was speaking so softly I could not make out all the words, but I recognized the tone. It was a sweet, submissive, guilty tone. I moved closer without making a sound and managed to hear one sentence. "No, he does not suspect a thing. I just need a little more time." I froze. A little more time. Time for what? I kept listening. "Yes, I know. I want to be with you without hiding, too." I felt my blood boil. This was not a confusing situation. This was not an indecisive woman. My wife was planning a complete emotional transition while I continued to pay for the comfort of her process. That night, I made a final decision. I was not going to beg for her love. I was not going to compete for someone who had already left me in her heart. I was not going to make a hysterical scene. I would give her exactly what she seemed to want: freedom. But first, I needed to see her tell the truth while looking me in the eyes. And I needed her to understand that she was not leaving me for some new romantic illusion, but that she was losing a solid life for a relationship built behind my back. So I chose Sunday. I made breakfast, invited her to sit with me on the patio. I smiled with a calmness I did not know I possessed, and spoke the words that would split our story in two. "We need to talk about Jillian." The cup trembled in her fingers. All the color drained from her face, and in that moment, I understood that the time had finally come to watch her fall apart. I will never forget the look on her face. It was as if all the oxygen had left her body in a single second. Her fingers clutched the cup so tightly I thought she would break it. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She just stared at me, motionless, like an animal caught in the headlights of a car in the middle of the night. "I do not know what you are talking about," she finally whispered. A lie, the first of many in less than 10 minutes. I took out my phone, unlocked the gallery, and placed several screenshots of her conversations with Jillian on the table. I did not need to show them all. 3 were enough. 3 messages full of love, desire, and shared plans to make her eyes fill with tears. She brought a hand to her mouth. "Can I explain?" I laughed. Not a fun laugh. One of those empty laughs that comes when the pain is so saturated it can only find an outlet in absurdity. "Perfect," I said. "Explain to me how you could carry on a secret relationship for months with the person who was stealing your affection while I was the husband sleeping next to you every night, and then serve me coffee every morning as if nothing was wrong." She started to cry. She shook her head over and over. I did not want it to happen like this. I was confused. I felt so lonely. You were never here anymore. There it was, the justification, the old, familiar strategy of shifting part of the blame. I felt a pang of rage. "Do not you dare turn this into a problem of work schedules," I replied. "If you felt lonely, you talk to me. If you felt lost, we seek help. What you did was lie to my face every single day." She covered her face. She was crying hard, but by then her tears seemed like a language I no longer understood. "I did not want to hurt you. And yet, you did." There was a heavy silence. Then she said something that, curiously, finished closing my heart for good. I do not know at what point I stopped feeling happy here. "Here." She did not even say "with you." She said "here," as if our marriage were just an uncomfortable room she was trying to escape. I nodded slowly. Then you do not have to stay here anymore. I explained with an almost surgical serenity that I had already spoken with an attorney, that the accounts were protected, that I would be filing for divorce that same week, that she could pack her things and leave with the person for whom she had decided to risk everything. Hearing that, she turned pale. I think until that moment, a part of her still believed there would be an emotional negotiation, a period of pleading, arguments, perhaps counseling, maybe a chance for romantic regret. But no, I had already buried something inside me. Please, do not make decisions so quickly, she said through sobs. We can fix this. I swear we can. I looked at her intently. Fix what exactly? The part where you fell in love with someone else? The part where you used me as cover while you decided whether to leave? Or the part where you called me your husband while planning a different life? She had no answer. She just cried more. I gave her until that night to pack her essentials. She did not scream. She did not make a scene. That was even sadder. She moved through the house like a ghost, putting clothes into suitcases with trembling hands. Several times she tried to approach me, but one look from me was enough to make her retreat. At 8 in the evening, Jillian came to pick her up. I was in the living room. I saw her enter my house for the first time, the same house whose mortgage I had been paying for months while they built their relationship in secret. Jillian greeted me with a curt nod. I did not respond. My wife carried one suitcase, then another. Before leaving, she turned to me. Her eyes were swollen, her nose was red, her face devastated. I am sorry, she said. And for the first time in the entire process, I understood that those two words arrive far too late when there is nothing left to protect. The door closed. I was alone. I thought I would feel triumphant. I thought I would feel immediate relief. But I did not. The house was plunged into an unbearable silence. A silence filled with objects that still spoke of us. The cup she used, the blanket on the sofa, a photo from our beach trip, 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. I fell apart that night. I cried like I had not cried since my father died. Not because I wanted her back, but because accepting the true end of a life takes time, even when you know there is no other way. The divorce proceedings moved forward over the following weeks. She signed the agreement without much argument. I suppose guilt and fear left her with no strength to fight for assets that legally belonged mostly to me. I only asked for a clean separation, with no public drama, no humiliations, no social media. I wanted to cut ties and disappear. However, the story did not end there. About a month later, I received a call from an unknown number. It was her. I was about to hang up, but something made me listen. Her voice was unrecognizable, lifeless, broken. I just wanted to tell you I made the worst mistake of my life. I remained silent. She continued, speaking through suppressed sobs. She confessed that living with Jillian was not the dream of freedom she had imagined. The relationship, sustained by secrecy and excitement, had changed when exposed to reality. Jillian was possessive, jealous, controlling. They argued daily. Nothing resembled the fantasy built through clandestine messages. I thought I was escaping a hollow life, she said, and instead I destroyed the only stable life I had. I closed my eyes. I did not feel satisfaction, only weariness. I cannot do anything with that now, I replied. She cried. You could never forgive me. It took me several seconds to answer. Forgive you? Maybe someday. Go back. No. I hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice. Months later, I learned from a mutual friend that she had also broken up with Jillian. The relationship had consumed itself as quickly as it had begun. Too many lies at its origin, too much guilt, too many unrealistic expectations. Sometimes people think that changing partners is the same as changing your destiny. They do not understand that when a relationship is born from betrayal, it carries the fracture within it from day one. I moved on. It was not fast. It was not elegant. There was therapy, bad nights, anger, unanswered questions. But one day, I woke up and realized I no longer checked my phone expecting a message from her. I no longer imagined alternative explanations. I no longer wondered at what exact moment I lost her. I simply accepted that some people do not leave your life all at once. They leave in small, daily lies until one day, all that is left is the echo of someone who swore to love you. And then you understand the cruelest lesson of all. that loving honestly does not always save you from pain, but leaving in time can save you from losing yourself. Comment. Hey everyone, this story really stuck with me. I believe protecting your self-respect is one of the most important things you can do for yourself. When someone repeatedly crosses your boundaries, you have every right to choose your peace and walk away with dignity. Healing takes time, but it truly begins the moment you stop accepting what hurts you. Be gentle with yourself during that process, even on the difficult days. Taking responsibility for your happiness is a powerful form of self-love. Sometimes, the healthiest choice is to let go and create space for something better. You deserve relationships that make you feel safe, seen, and truly valued. Keep choosing yourself and your well-being every single day. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this story. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.